welcome everybody to this meeting of the NHS Direct Public Board. Today we have a slightly different format from the way we've been running things in the past. We're going to have an hour of public board, then we're going to break up into our two key subcommittees to work for the rest of the day, and we're going to come back in private session some point tomorrow. So I'm going to invite everybody who's watching us online, please, to fill in an evaluation form, and if you have any constructive comments, please share them with us. We have a few apologies for absence and a few special welcomes. So absent today, just Tricia?
Yes.
Absent.
Tricia is on study leave.
Okay, I don't think anyway. That's so we're welcoming Jackie, who's sitting in with Tricia today. So we've got Keith, who's not at all well, we're very sorry about that, and we send him our best wishes. And we have Jill Thorpe here today, representing Keith. And Louisa, who's still not well, also. And we have Roger Rawlinson dialing in. So I think that's full complement.
Yep.
Full complement? Good. Okay. I've had no declaration of interest.
I should
have one.
Notice, I should recall that I am now a trustee of Kedbury Hospital Limited, which is a charity providing NHS services in Gloucestershire and North Wiltshire.
Thank you for letting us know that. That will, we will update our records to reflect that. Okay. So nothing specifically about no conflicts of interest on today's agenda. Let's move straight on to the minutes of our last board meeting, which was the 24th of September. Does anybody have any matters of accuracy on the last set of minutes? Ruth?
I'd like to record my apologies for the September meeting. Thank you.
Alan?
Just one in paragraph 7.4. I think the back reference to 6.4 should be to 6.5.
Eagle eyes.
Well spotted.
Very good. Okay, so then let's move on to the action log, which captures all of our actions out of the meeting. Two of those are closed. I would just like to unpick the third one.
So I think that's for Roger on the phone.
Yeah.
So this is the question about whether the values awards, whether they did go all to the same place as they did the year before. But you've got some explanation here, I think, from Roger about how the process worked that showed that it was open.
Yes, I think it doesn't quite get to the question about were the submissions from the same subset of contact centres this year as last year, Roger?
I think the question was, were the all the entries from one contact centre, and I can confirm that they weren't. They were from, and this is for one division, of course. They were from Bristol, Dudley, Exeter, Mansfield, Nottingham, and Stafford, as well as entries who were home workers. So whilst two of the winners were from the same contact centre, the entries certainly weren't. The entries were for a more wide variety of contact centres.
Okay.
I then explain how that the process is fair and transparent, so that my conclusion is that either one contact centre is particularly good, or there are particularly good people in that contact centre, but it's not just because that's the only contact centre that had any interest.
Okay, so you're reassuring us, Roger, that individuals, wherever they happen to work within the organisation, do have a real opportunity to be nominated as as representing our values.
Yeah.
And does anyone else have a continuing concern on that score? No, it doesn't look like it.
I don't think I'm
okay,
reassured.
So thank you, Roger. That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other actions which weren't captured in the log or that we want to pick up? All right then. Let's move smartly along to Nick's Chief Executive report, which is on this occasion
Verbal.
Verbal.
It's verbal, as I was away when the papers were being prepared, And so I have 4 items that I'm going to very quickly flag up. I will follow up in writing so that you've got the relevant references. So the 4 things I want to mention are, the first is that the Chief Executive of the NHS and NHS Commissioning Board, Sir David Nicholson, has written to Joanne and I, alongside every NHS trust and foundation trust in the country, about the Hillsborough disaster and the follow through to ensure that the problems highlighted in the Hillsborough report encountered by South Yorkshire Ambulance Service in the adequacy of their response to the Hillsborough disaster, that those could never be repeated. And he's asked that we undertake a high-level review of our major incident processes, including how we work with local partners to ensure that we are confident that we've got adequate procedures in place. We will undertake that review and report back to the board. Our major incident process was reviewed a short while ago anyway, but we will make sure that we undertake a further review and report back.
All I was going to say is, can I just...
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to take Peter and then Steve.
I was going to say that, I mean, it would be slightly difficult to produce anything of value given the changes that are going to happen in the system. I'm just thinking about how to use this review wisely. That's all. I appreciate doing it, but it's just a question of...
I think it's both now and for the future.
Well, that's more what I would hope.
And I think that we will be firmly part of people's major incident processes in each of the localities where we're a 111 provider, and we'll bear that in mind in the review.
Okay, that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Sorry, Sarah wanted to
just to let the board know that the Department of Health on Friday released a set of core standards, which is going to be a new framework that we will have to implement for emergency planning. So this has come out at quite a timely moment for us, because in the paper that we present to you, we can describe what we're doing today, but also what future NHS Direct needs to take into consideration.
Thank you.
Steve.
Yeah, I can't square this in my head. Why are we doing this review?
Because every single NHS organisation has been asked to look at its emergency planning procedures in the light of the...
Yeah, no, we're not being specially picked out.
I couldn't get my head around whether we were doing it on behalf of the ambulance trust or whether...
No, it's just... I mean, that tends to be a cycle that happens within the NHS in response to things going wrong. We are then all reminded to check up on whatever it has.
I understand now. Thank you.
Okay. So that was the first item. The second item, which is I think relatively routine, but I just wanted to make sure it had been flagged, is that the new Trust Development Authority has come into formal existence on the 1st of October. That it has taken over making decisions from SHAs that are of national significance already, and that there will be a transition for the accountability of all NHS trusts, including ourselves, to the NHS Trust Development Authority by the 1st of April. And we'll be talking to them about the mechanics of how that's actually going to operate. But this will replace any notional, I would refer it to as notional sponsorship arrangements that we've had to date from the Department of Health, and gives a more firm and secure method of reporting in as a provider. So I'll circulate that information. The third item was, which board members have been notified of, but I'll just raise it publicly again for the record, that the Sheffield report has now been published, the evaluation of the 111 pilots. And there are some, I'm not going to comment on the report itself, but simply to outline that the executive summary of the report makes it clear that all of the sites operated to the standards that they expected, and that's clearly important from our point of view. That some integration of services had been achieved. Users were generally satisfied with the services that they were provided for, although there is scope for further refinement, it says. It indicates that 1 year after launch, the pilots had not delivered the expected benefits in terms of improving satisfaction rates with urgent care. It makes some comments about the economic analysis, which we have been very interested in at this board, and quotes that there is a small probability that NHS 111 will provide for cost savings when you view the impact. The reverse of that statement is also true, that there is a high probability that it will yield increased costs. And that pretty much is what is set out in the executive summary. It's there in fuller detail in the report as a whole, which obviously is now in the public domain, and we'll make sure that all board members have got a link to it.
So I'm sure we'll all be very interested to read the full report, if we haven't already. It's important that it's noted. We're very pleased to see it published. I think we can only regret the fact it wasn't published earlier, really. If there aren't any questions, we'll go on to the next.
Okay, and the final point, sort of end on a positive note, although the board was informed of this privately at the last board meeting, it wasn't yet then in the public domain, but since our last board meeting, we've been appointed as the preferred provider for Buckinghamshire, and that's now in the public domain. That brings our total of the proportion of England One to about 33%, and there are some decisions that are imminent to be made, again, which the board will be aware of privately, but they haven't yet come out of the standstill period. I believe, and Ruth will correct me if I'm wrong, we're now up to 12 contracts. Is that correct?
10 excluding any public decisions.
There you go. Right. She corrected me. I had asked her to do, but including Buckinghamshire. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Nick. Are there any questions to the Chief Executive about anything in his report, or more broadly that people would like to test him on?
Test him? Oh, it's always good to be tested on a Monday morning.
Especially when you've been on holiday. You've been back a week now, so I'm sure you would pass any test we can throw at you. Okay, that's fine then. Thanks very much, Nick. It's really helpful. So let's just move on and quickly look at the corporate performance package. Reminding ourselves that the subcommittees will be looking in more detail about the performance aspects related to that part of the service portfolio for which they are responsible. So, Trevor, do you want to just give us a quick introduction on the package as a whole?
Yes, Chair. Overall, performance against our amended KPIs remains good, remains strong. Volumes are slightly below planned levels. One particular issue of note from the scorecard was warm transfer associated with 111 services. There is a national issue which we are looking to discuss further with the Department of Health on that particular metric, but we did experience a dip in performance in September. Two key elements behind that. One is the changes that we're making in terms of our telephony, the cut-over period. That's had a disproportionate effect on the smaller scale of operation around 111 services. And secondly, the training associated with staffing for pathways has meant that elements of our trained staff have been taken offline to do preceptorship. So both of those have impacted on the KPI this month. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions on our performance scorecard.
I'm going to take Steve, then Alan, and then Peter.
That's just really to comment on the sickness figure, which is below target for the month. I've read that correctly.
Better than target. Is that what you meant?
Better.
Yes.
That's the word, better.
Yes.
Roger, do you want to comment on that?
No, it was really to congratulate the team.
Well done, yeah.
So,
and it's not
Sorry, could you just repeat the question? I'm sorry.
no, it was just a comment from Steve that he was congratulating the organisation on having exceeded its target by having sickness levels below that which were expected.
Yeah, it's the first time for 2 or 3 years that we've actually been in amber on sickness, and I think given the circumstances we're in at the moment, Steve's quite right that an extraordinary performance, and I think particularly our line managers should be congratulated for particularly our line managers to the front line, because our sickness traditionally, as you know, has not been good, and we are now very much within the same area of performance as the rest of the NHS, which, given that we are a contact centre, actually is a very good performance indeed. And I hope we can keep it up through the period of transition.
Thanks, Roger. That's great. And we are obviously very satisfied with that, and congratulate everybody involved, particularly recognising the role of the frontline managers, as you say. Alan.
Yes, it was just to pick up on the point Trevor was making about the warm transfer metric and the impact of the telephony refresh project, and just to assure the board that transition to the new Cisco platform is now complete, so we shouldn't see that issue any further.
Thank you. Peter.
Yes, I felt this reflected really well on the team, both here and at the front line, in delivering a highly commendable set of metrics in difficult situation. That we're in, as we know, in a transitional phase. I've seen lots of organisations I've been associated with in the past not being able to deliver through that sort of period. And in fact, it appears to me as though there's an improvement going on. There are one or two small dips and minor sort of just not quite over the line points. But these are highly commendable, and people should be congratulated, particularly as you indicated, the frontline people who are running and delivering the service and the people actually doing the job. I think it's really wonderful. My only comment, other than that, was the fact that when you look at the excellent greens that we get on the back page, on page 11, the urgent and emergency referrals have started to climb, and in fact the 111 urgent and emergency referrals are almost the 0845 numbers is almost getting towards similar pattern.
Which is exactly what we'd expect.
And an opportunity for Nick to say comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just before you do that, Nick, let me just ask if there are any other comments or queries on performance, because then, Nick, I'd like you to sum up if you can.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, it doesn't look like it.
Yep.
Off you go.
So, as the board will be aware, we have been in the process of doing two things. The first is implementing an update to the CSPT algorithms, which makes it behave much more like 111. So it has had the effect of reducing the proportion of calls that are referred to nurses. That has enabled us to concentrate our nurse resource on patients who need their attention the most, and it has meant that we've been able to improve our performance in that regard. But it has had the effect of increasing the proportion of patients who are referred through urgent and emergency referral levels, not actually yet to the levels that we expect to be when 111 comes in, but it's moved in that direction. That's with the full understanding of our commissioner, and one of the things that you'll notice when you get the same report for October is that the target levels have now been adjusted to reflect the agreement that we've made with the with Midlands and East. So our performance has shifted, but it's shifted in a way that's been expected. The second thing that we're in the process of doing, which again the board is aware of, is moving from CSPT to using pathways, and that will have a further change in that particular metric as far as urgent emergency referrals is concerned, and we expect that to become increasingly apparent between now and Christmas, when we expect to have moved entirely over to pathways. Of course, we're moving to pathways in order to ease the transition to 111, and for our staff who will be moving into 111 delivery, both internally with us and also with other providers, over the same in January, February, March. So yes, it does mean that urgent emergency referrals will have gone up because we are preparing the organisation to shift to the new 111 service that's been commissioned.
Tim?
I'd just like to say, I mean, we looked at this at the Finance Committee as well, and I congratulated the executive for taking proactive action with the customer to get this reflected. So it shows that we've got better control of performance than maybe years ago we had.
Yeah. No, I think it strikes me very forcibly that we understand what's driving our performance, and we're able to predict it, with a much greater understanding than we used to have. And of course, in relation to sickness, it's great to see. But the winter is the big challenge for the service overall. So let's hope we're able to carry on there. And it is regrettable, I think, that we will be sending more urgent patients and urgent emergency referrals into the face-to-face service at the time when they will also be struggling with winter pressures. But that's what's been agreed, and that's what's required of us. So we're doing that according to plan.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we carry on then? Finance, Trevor. I don't think there's a great deal to say about this, probably. Very good.
Yeah, our financial performance remains ahead of plan, just over £500,000 ahead of plan. Cash balances remain strong. We've gone through a budget resetting exercise with all of our budget holders, and we have a reforecast position which we would like to use to restate our position mid-year for a 700,000 surplus target for year end. That is subject to a range of assumptions and commitments that the Department of Health need to honour for decommissioning and transition costs. But the financial results do remain strong. They've been subject to discussion at the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee recommends the restatement of that budget to the board.
In fact, there was a very good report from Jackie Dunn, and we asked for some risks to be attached to that. And I thought you might have put it in the board papers, actually, Trevor, but I'm sure that's available to
it is.
To the
and
board.
We'll circulate that separately. Yes.
Okay. So I don't think we probably need to discuss this in any detail. We can perhaps move on. Thank you, Trevor. That's great. Very reassuring to receive our customary solid financial performance. Let's move then into the strategy section of the agenda, where we were given the updated business plan for 2012-13, as planned and as expected. Nick, Ruth, I don't know if you want to introduce this, but we'll have a conversation about it.
Thank you, Chair. So, as we committed to when we published this year's business plan, in light of the changes that we would experience this year, we agreed to publish a mid-year update, which this paper is. It effectively sets out the further updates in light of the latest position on our 111 contracts and those contracts that we have won. It also provides an update on the activity that the organisation has been undertaking to date around maintaining existing services, developing a new operating model for the future 111 service, and the transition from the existing service to the new service. It includes the latest financial position and also updates on the high-level risks that we foresee in each of those work streams. And the final update is a reflection of the new governance arrangements we've put in place at subcommittee level that will receive extreme support.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody have questions and comments? Or comments? I do, so I'm going to put myself in the queue. So I've got Tim, Trevor, me. Okay. Tim, do you want to start?
Thank you. Firstly, I thought it was excellent. It was brief and it was concise. It was really well written, so well done. normally we would have huge paragraphs. My only question is, on page 4, on patient choice, with choose and book, and we're going to provide the service till the contract ends in November 2013. Are we going to seek to rebid for that? Do we know what's going to happen with that service, or is it just going to end and be local?
I can see Alan and Ruth both happy to answer that question.
So there is a national commitment to re-procure the choose and book system. They have extended it as far as possible,
right.
And so they have to re-procure it. We understand that they're planning for that re-procurement, of which the appointments line will be part of that, and it would be the intention of future NHS Direct to bid for that
Okay,
service.
well, should we put that in the business plan that we're going to rebid when it's...
It's not really a second half of the year activity, I suspect.
Okay, all right. I
next
take your point. All right, thank you. It just looked a bit bald to me, that statement, that's all. We're not going off a cliff, we're going to do what we can to continue. That's good, thank you.
Trevor?
If we look at the final paragraph, the final sentence of the third paragraph in the introduction, it says that we will safely transition the responsibility of handling 0845. I would suggest that we actually say we will work closely with 111 providers to transition. This is a partnership, it's not something we do to the 111 providers, it's something we do jointly with them. And if we accept that, the second paragraph, existing services, contains almost the same sentence, and we need to reflect that there.
Yeah.
I think it's important we do reflect
It's absolutely
the
a mutual
partnership.
activity,
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not something we can do on our own.
yeah, I agree.
But other than that, I agree with Tim, it's an excellent document.
Thank you. I also think it's a nice, crisp document. I've got a few specific comments. I'll just run through them very quickly. I think we need to be very careful that we, in describing our commitment to enforcing Cabinet Office guidelines, we recognise that it's not something that's wholly within our gift.
Yeah.
I think there are a number of places in the document where it appears as though that's something that we can deliver, and we can't, frankly. So I think that needs to be looked at. I think there are various places where the language could be a bit more commercial and customer focused. So I will give you some specifics on that. I think there's a tendency, it still reads to me slightly to suffer from some of the ways of thinking that we had when we were producing service prospectuses, back in the day. We really need to demonstrate that we are going to be delivering the things that customers want, and we're going to be able to demonstrate return on investment for those things. So I think there are some language issues there. I think on page 6 at the bottom we might want to say a little bit more about the scale and the unprecedented uncertainties that we're going through, and the fact that it's probably the biggest ever live service decommissioning. And I think that would help frame the other things in the document. And I think on page 7, we note that in the transition team that we've got 2 staff side representatives co-opted onto the transition team. It's very good and very positive. I think we could probably be worth saying a little bit more about our commitment to working in partnership with the staff side and their representatives through this very difficult period. And finally, I was just wondering whether it's a little bit similar to the Cabinet Office guidelines point about our future organisational form. So I just want to check that we're fully consistent. At the top of page 3, we're talking about progressing our plans to get to foundation trust status. And on page 7, we're just talking about a new legal form. So I just think we want to be very clear to what extent we are committing to FT.
I think both things are still valid, that we're on the FT pipeline and that we realise that there will be a new legal form.
So I just want to be absolutely clear that what we're saying is consistent and reflects our best understanding of the position as it stands. And I think what I'd like to do is to probably hand over my marked up copy just for some small things in there. But overall, a very important and useful thing to have done. Clearly sets out what describes very well what we are now needing to do, and I think as such will be very helpful, and that's why I'm being a bit picky about some of these things, because I think it's a very important and valuable document actually.
Well, I'm sure we can reflect those comments in the in the document, and if the board is content, we'll do that offline
Yes.
and just simply circulate the document for information rather than bringing it back for another.
No, I
another
totally
go.
agree. So I think just for clarity, I think what I'm hearing, the absence of comments from colleagues, apart from those very positive endorsements, suggests that we can approve this document subject to some small refinements which we can do offline.
Yep.
Nick, would you like to?
Could I just pause briefly on the financial figures at the end in Appendix 1, because clearly what we've done here is to bring together quite a large number of changes that have occurred as a result of the creation of the future NHS Direct, the mobilisation of 111 services, and the decommissioning agenda that we now have much more clearly, although not completely yet, in focus, and quite significant financial movements entailed in all of those things, together with renegotiation with our Commissioner and with the Midlands and East, and discussions with the Department of Health have enabled us to bring together a balanced picture for the year end. So a bit like a swan swimming, there's an awful lot going on underneath. And I just wanted to highlight that to the board. Clearly we spent an hour or so in the Finance Committee, Tim, going through that in a lot more detail. And there will be the opportunity, no doubt, for that to be reflected in the Finance Committee's report back to the board next month. But I just wanted to highlight that, because it's not simply the description of what we're doing in the second half of the year that really matters, it's the numbers.
Okay. So what you're telling us, Nick, is that some quite big changes have all been built, bottom up, checked through.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, I think we can carry on then. So that completes our strategy section. And we can go straight through into governance and compliance and the corporate risk register. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the corporate risk register has been reviewed and updated. And you'll notice that the structure has changed to reflect the recent organisational governance changes that we've made within the organisation. And I'm happy to report that there are currently no red risks on the public section of the risk register this month.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the public section of the corporate risk register? I think just to comment that we haven't got any public risks around the new NHS Direct organisation. That's something I think the subcommittee will want to look at, and it may be that we can put some of those risks back into the public domain.
I think the application of current office guidelines is still pretty heavy weather. And I
gives you an opportunity to talk about that.
Would you like to comment on the amber status?
Yes, I would. The interpretation of the risk that we have is that we implement that which the Department of Health has agreed. And where shifts have occurred in what the Department of Health has agreed, it's then reflected in our programme accordingly. So the fact that there are clearly legal issues associated with the transfer of staff to non-NHS providers, and that is something which the department itself has taken its own legal advice on and informed us of the outcome, that in itself would not create a red risk for the organisation, because it is the plan that we are now working to.
Okay.
Does that help clarify?
Yes, I think it
the
does.
fact that things are going on, but they're not necessarily reflected in an uprating of the risk register, because they're not our risk to manage.
Precisely, that was the sort of response I was looking for, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some elements are not.
No.
Yes.
That's your statement's dead right.
Anything else, Sue?
It's a reiteration of some of the points already made, actually. But I was just looking at the back part of it. Well, the reds, a reduction in risk on three very key areas. Recruitment of nurse advisors, sickness levels, and the health advisor performance. I sort of feel like we're skating over it. There's some really good news in all of this. I mean, there's some really good news in the way the finance is being actively managed, some really good news around operating performance, and I just sort of wanted to reiterate, actually, given what the organisation's going through, I mean, this is really something to be pleased about.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely worth reiterating, because there are a number of pieces of a jigsaw puzzle which look, and I mean, one almost doesn't want to say it because we know there's a long way to go, and we, exactly, and we don't want to be complacent about it. But it should be recognised that if you look at operational performance, sickness, and financial risks, that there's every indication that the transition is being managed as well as it possibly can be. And thank you, Sue. I think it absolutely is worth acknowledging that, and recognising the contribution that's being made from all over the organisation, from top to bottom, to enable that to happen. Okay, that's a very nice place to end Corporate Risk Register. We've got another couple of items which we will want to, for the record, go through quickly. We've got updated governance manual and terms of reference. Sarah, do you want to talk about those very quickly?
Yes. In light of the establishment of the two new board subcommittees, we have amended our corporate governance manual to reflect these changes, and I would like to request that the board approve the changes outlined in section 6 of the paper, which reflect the changes that we've made to the scheme of delegation to give those subcommittees some authority. And also just to note the amendments that we've made to the board agenda, because the scrutiny will happen at the subcommittee level, and appreciate that we've had to update the terms of reference of all the committees.
Yeah. So this is a very important piece of work. It's the nuts and bolts behind the governance changes which the board has previously approved. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about the way that those have played out? Trevor?
It's a fine point of detail, but in the membership of the existing services subcommittee, it quotes a minimum of 3 non-executive directors and has 3 voting executives. We actually have 4 non-executives serving on the committee. I would suggest the minimum should be 4, so that we comply with good governance to have a majority of non-executives on the committee.
Is that for attendance or for...
This is membership of the committee.
Actual membership?
Membership of the committee.
It would, with the chairs casting vote, having 3 and 3 still meets the requirements, I believe.
I personally would rather we had a majority of non-executives.
Let's go with the chair.
And we have a majority anyway. There are 4 of us on the committee.
There are, and I'm not in any way suggesting that anyone will go under a bus, but if anyone were to go under a bus, it would mean that we were immediately non-quorate, and that, or non-compliant, and that, if that's not actually necessary, I would be concerned.
And could we take it offline? Because I think we should follow strict good governance, which would be a majority of non-execs. But let's not spend time now.
Just in this particular, the way we've described the terms of reference, we've separated out the membership from the quoracy, so we can amend at Trevor's request and it won't affect our quoracy.
I understand that, but if there weren't, okay, so if there was a non-executive director who was still a non-executive director of the board, but was somehow temporarily incapacitated from attending, that would still be okay. In which case, I give way.
Gracefully.
Gracefully, well, as gracefully as I can muster.
That's the most graceful we've ever seen.
So that change will be put through.
Okay.
So we've agreed that the changes to the corporate governance plan are subject to that and subject to Tim.
Yeah, well, just a comment really. From the finance committee point of view, I think colleagues will remember that I was questioning a little bit the future role of the finance committee. Since then, we had the meeting by telephone the other Friday, 2 weeks ago, I think, and that convinced me, in fact, that I was wrong. So I think these new arrangements are exactly right, because we were duplicating the work of the new operating model committee. So I'm perfectly happy with these. Where I wasn't, we might have recorded that I wasn't that happy. I needed to think about it last time. I'm now happy.
Okay, that's good. Trevor, then Alan.
Chair, I just think it's worth noting that we have shared this and the detail of all the changes we're making with our internal auditors, and they are content and have endorsed the changes that we're making.
So the internal auditors are happy, that's good. Alan?
Just a couple of points of detail on the changes to the corporate governance manual. Under capital schemes 5C, I think there needs to be a change to reflect that the capital planning group should also be reporting on the programme to those people who signed off the business cases, that is the existing services committee and the future NHS direct.
I think it will relate to 12-13 spend, and therefore 12-13 spend is very much in the remit of the finance committee and the existing services, because it is about the delivery of the financial results for 12-13, which is not divided out between the different parts of the organisation. So there may need to be reporting of the success of capital schemes to the future NHS Direct Committee, but the actual financial monitoring will continue to be part of the remit of the Finance Committee.
Alan, can I suggest if you still have nuances around that you might resolve those offline?
It's because it's about 12-13.
And there's a similar one on 8B,
yep.
Where I think there's a lack of consistency.
Okay.
I can take it offline.
Okay.
So, are we content to approve the changes to the... Tim, sorry.
Just a small point on at the end on the change, the way this feeds through then to the Trust Board agenda. I'm a little bit anxious about the idea of us no longer as non-execs reporting our activities in a public arena to show that we've got a finger on the pulse.
Yes.
Okay, so have you got a solution to that?
Quite clearly, all of the monitoring that's done at the subcommittees, whether it's clinical governance, finance, or either of the other two committees that we just created, future and the existing and decommissioning, their minutes will be publicly reported through to the board, with the opportunity for the board as a whole to discuss any issues that are related there. So that remains unchanged. What we have ensured is that there is a quick system of verbal reporting through to the two subcommittees from those other committees, so that issues that are happening at the moment are raised at the relevant forum straight away and come to the board in written formal form as a matter of governance requirement the following month.
Is that what you were talking about?
I'm not sure that quite addresses the concern. I think what you're describing is good and proper and very helpful.
Okay.
But I think it still doesn't quite demonstrate to the public that the non-execs are exercising their duties in understanding what's going on the front line, in keeping with Francis.
So you're talking more about the visits and
two seconds on the agenda. But important 2 seconds, in my view.
The existing services committee will be undertaking all of those things that the board has been undertaking, including call recordings and engagement visits and keeping in touch with the front line, and will report its deliberations through to the board, at which point the board has the opportunity to debate or discuss what's been happening.
Whether that's transparent enough and easy enough to digest for those people who are interested, I'm not sure.
Okay, can we just sort of suck it and see, as it were? Because what we've been trying to do is to minimise the duplication between the committees, and similarly the future NHS Direct Subcommittee is going to want to do its own, keeping in touch with the frontline activities. So why don't we see, and we might want to, offer the opportunity to ask questions or whatever on that particular topic. Okay.
I'm very anxious that anybody watching this will think that we've swallowed some kind of bureaucracy pill of all these new committees and all these new arrangements, and I'm very conscious of the fact that we are making these arrangements in order that we can deal with the multiple agendas that we've got and have the relevant focus and continuing focus on the things that really matter, including patient safety and patient quality and experience. And my anxiety would be, if we bring everything to the board, that it will get lost because there is so much going on, and that's why we're having to split things down into the subcommittees. I just wanted to put that on the record, because anyone observing this for the first time would think, what on earth are they on about?
All right.
let's see. Let's try that in practice.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So I think then we are in a position to approve the corporate governance manual subject to the changing on the existing services and transition subcommittee that we discussed before, and a side conversation about the timescales and how we report things like capital spending. We are then on to the feedback from the Audit Committee meeting, which met a few days ago. The Audit Committee met a few days ago on the 22nd. Peter, would you like to make an oral report?
Yes, mainly this was a tidying up exercise. We did review a number of internal audit reports, which some of which the Audit Committee has commented on and asked for some feedback. But mostly the reports were of detailed systems that had been evaluated. There was also some reports about visits to various facilities with NHS Direct, and we were able to review particularly things like pay systems, and sickness, which you talked about earlier. We did have some concerns about some of the fire training still, which we were assured would be brought into line, although the actual performance was improving. So I think the board should be pleased about that, but there's still a bit more work to be done. There were very few outstanding management issues around all of the audit reports that we looked at. We keep an eye on all of those reports. There was, in fact, only one where assurance was given about why that was, and we noted that. So mostly it was routine business, but very important detail. There's nothing I particularly want to draw to your attention today, but the Audit Committee will keep an eye on a number of the internal audit reports where we had some concerns, which we are monitoring.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody want to ask Peter anything about, who wasn't at the Audit Committee, want to ask anything about
And two
Peter's
of my colleagues on the
master
phone,
course?
which was very exciting for me.
No? Okay. Thank you. Well, I haven't been informed of any other business. Does anybody want to bring anything forward? No. Okay, so this is our first try at a very truncated public board meeting. We brought it in within the hour. For me, I think that there is, which shows it can be done. The next time this board meets will be on the 26th of November, here at 10:30 in the morning. If anybody's still with us, please fill in an evaluation form if you're watching us online. For me, I think the one outstanding item thinking about, which we need to continue to think about in relation to the operation of this integrated corporate board, is to what extent our responsibility as a board to keep in touch with the reality of the service in the front line is going to be met through this. And I think that's something which Tim Hayman raised, and which we should continue to think about. But other than that, I think the process seems to work reasonably well, and we're now going to break up into our two subcommittees, which will be the two streams that go on working through the day. Thank you very much. Board meeting's over.
Thank you.
Thank you.